Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read TFOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called Silence, written by LgFatherAnthrocite. Birgit was terrified. He had been sure that the job would be easy. He just needed to kill one of these little flesh piles called a Human. They were half Birgit's size. He needed the cash, and the job seemed simple. The Human was living on an asteroid rich in some rare elements, and a manufacturing company in need of said elements wanted the Human gone, so they could move in on his claim. The contract paid really well, and Birgit agreed. The high price of the contract should have been his first clue that it was a bad idea. Birgit looked up Human as his ship headed towards the asteroid in question. Humans, it turned out, were from a high-gravity world, covered in plant and animal life that at first glance seemed to be trying to kill every other thing on the planet. The bit that really creeped out Birgit was the fact that there were plants that killed and ate animals on this planet. The fact that the target was a Deathworlder should have been Birgit's second clue that this was a bad idea. Now Birgit was stranded on an asteroid, alone with the monster, and Birgit was terrified. This was the first thing Birgit got right. Fear was the correct response. It was unfortunate for Birgit that he had not heeded the clues, and now he was going to die. Shortly after landing his craft on the asteroid, Birgit disembarked and hiked over to the small cluster of mechanical equipment that was visible on the surface. He recognized air and water filtration systems and other basic life support equipment. He knew there'd be a way in near the mechanical cluster. After a few minutes of searching, he found an airlock door set into the face of the outcropping. He accessed the control panel and entered the airlock. After it cycled, he popped off his helmet and stuck it to his back with a magnetic strip. This was Birgit's first mistake. He walked down a dimly lit tunnel and found a blast door a short way down. He checked around the edges and saw that there was a room beyond the blast door, but it was currently unoccupied. He entered the room and began to look around. He saw a basic living space. There was a kitchen area and a dining area. Off to one side was a small sleeping room, judging by the pile of blankets and other bedding. A sanitary room stood off to the left of the blast door. There were several tunnels leading away from the living area. Birgit looked down each of the dimly lit tunnels and saw that they were not well lit and seemed to snake randomly through the bowels of the asteroid. Birgit selected the tunnel to the right of the one that he had entered and started down it, looking for the occupant of the warren. As he walked down the tunnel, claws out, he noticed something. The gentle hum of equipment stopped. As a spacer, Birgit felt his hackles rise. The sounds of mechanical systems were the assurance of continued existence. Silence meant no fresh air, no water, spoiled food. To a spacer, especially one on the asteroid in this middle of nowhere, silence was death. Birgit shook himself and began down the tunnel again. He should have plenty of air in his living space to find and destroy his target, and then he could be back on his ship and leave. At the end of the tunnel was a small computer-controlled mining drill. Apparently, the human was expanding his warren. Birgit turned and walked back towards the common room. As he approached, he thought he heard something. He slowed and checked curiously around the corner at the end of the tunnel to make sure the human wasn't there. Seeing nothing, he ventured down to the next tunnel over. This was Birgit's second mistake. Birgit walked a long way down the second tunnel. Eventually, it passed through another blast door, and shortly after that, the tunnel ended in a sealed hatch. Birgit looked through the portal on the door and saw that beyond lay a refinery for processing ore into refined metal. The equipment was shut down. Birgit turned and started back towards the common room. There were only 2 other tunnels to check. As he entered the common room, the dim lighting provided by overhead glow plates suddenly shut off. He was now in a silent, subterranean dock that caused the primitive part of his brain to shriek in fear. Workett turned on a flashlight and swept the common room for signs that had been disturbed since his last visit. He saw nothing, but off to the right was a sound, slow and rhythmic. Workett started down the third tunnel, using his flashlight to light the way. Again, the blast door, and then a hatch. Looking through, Workett saw what looked like a warehouse for ingots of refined metal. The hatch was open, and the sound came from inside. He stepped inside and searched for the source of the sound. It had alien words now, and his translator was converting the speech into something that he could understand. It was music, and the melody was haunting to Workett. People hearing without listening. People writing songs their voices never share. And no one dared disturb the sound of silence. "Fools," said I, "you do not know silence, like a cancer grows." Workett was bothered by this unfamiliar lyrics, and the reminder of the quiet all around him. He found the small device playing the music and turned it off. This was Workett's last mistake. As the silence came crashing back in around him, Workett did not hear the sound of the hatch cycling shut. He also did not hear the blast door in the tunnel close. What he did hear was the alarm that went off. At first he didn't know what it was, but he felt a breeze across his face and realized that the warehouse was actually a giant airlock. He quickly locked on his helmet back into place over his head and headed for the hatch. The hatch was sealed now that the airlock was cycling, and Workett noted that the blast doors were a few dozen feet down was also closed. Workett looked around the room and saw the controls for the airlock door. A giant door set at 90 degrees to the hatch he had entered, and went to try and stop the airlock from cycling. The control pad was locked out. Workett thought to himself, "I can just go back to the ship, it's fine." That's when he saw the human for the first time. It stood a few feet behind him, and as he turned, it lunged at him, slicing a hole through his suit. Before he could react, it had disappeared into the dark maze of crates and stacks of ingots scattered around the room. How could it move so fast in a pressure suit, he thought. Slowly, the blast doors opened and let in light from the local star. Workett ran between a stack of crates and crouched down. He fumbled for an emergency patch and slapped it over the hole in his suit. He was standing back up when the human, now perched atop a crate, lashed out and cut his suit again. Workett was so surprised he yelped and nearly fell over. He looked, but the human was gone. It had jumped 20 roll, roughly 10 feet, into the air, and was nowhere to be seen. He ran to another stack of crates, away from the human's jump, and again was fumbling for a patch, when the human came around the corner and sliced his leg, before disappearing around the edge of the crate. Workett fell over backwards at the attack and began to crawl away on hands and knees. The human popped out from behind him and sliced a fourth hole in his suit before disappearing again. Workett's breath was ragged. He was venting too much air for his suit to keep up. He could hear his heart pounding in his chest. His vision was starting to turn to a tunnel as his brain was starved of breathable air. The last thing he saw was a human kneel over him, knife in hand. Workett was terrified. He was going to die. Workett awoke with a start. He was laying in the airlock of his ship. He looked down and saw that his suit was covered in holes, some patched, some not. He stood and noticed a piece of paper fall to the floor. It had a message in unfamiliar language. He entered his ship and saw that all the other pressure suits were shredded, and when he checked, the patches were missing. He went to the bridge and lifted off, setting course for the nearest station to get new suits and a stiff drink. He ran the note through the translator. 2 words in human English. "No trespassing." End of story. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Bushmaster 177, Henry the Red, Caspar Arnholtz, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Elijah Silvercross, Dragzoon WRE, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.